Welcome back, Olson Speed Shop. As you can see, we just barely pulled this engine out of the 94 S10. So I thought I'd take this time, take a little bit of time to explain the difficult spots of pulling a 4.3 V6 out of an S10. Now, if this had been a two-wheel drive S10, they're quite a bit easier because you don't have the front differential to deal with. So, but this is, so I'll put this in the title, but these are the tricks to get a 4.3 liter V6 out of a 5-speed truck, 4-wheel drive. That's kind of as far as being a pain in the butt, that's kind of the perfect storm. The 5-speed doesn't help and 4-wheel drive doesn't help, but it's not bad. When we had this thing ready to roll a week ago, we had some family issues come up we had to take care of. So I've been out here by myself for about an hour, and then Stephen got home. We yanked her out. So here are the problem spots for pulling a 4.3 liter out of a 94, or that goes up all the S10s of the newer body styles, even the older body styles. Here's the trouble spots. Okay, where to start? First thing, as you pull it out, if you go to pull the starter off, you cannot get the starter out of the hole without raising the engine. So what we did, pulled out the bolts, dropped it down, we undid the wires, and I just left it in there until we lifted that engine up to pull it out. But word to the wise, if you need to replace your starter in an S10, you need to raise the engine up a little bit. It's not that big a deal. They have hooks on it. You just pull out the through bolt, at least on the passenger side. You can hook up a cherry picker or some way to raise it up. You can probably even get a floor jack. Raise it up and then finagle it out of the hole. No big deal. Other spots. So if you look at this oil pan, you can see how deep it is. And I know for a fact, if you get a two-wheel drive 4.3, because I just did one of them, I did a two-wheel drive engine out of a two-wheel drive S10 with a 4.3. This is different. The oil pan's different from four-wheel drive to two-wheel drive. I want to say the two-wheel drive one is a little less shallower, I think, if I remember right. I remember I had pulled it off because I'd pulled the 4.3 out of a Blazer to put in an S10 truck, and it was a four-wheel drive Blazer. But I had to change the oil pan over, and when I didn't even think about it, but as I was going to swap it, I had to change the oil pump also because it was either too deep or not deep enough. I can't remember. Anyway, they're different. So you're going from four-wheel drive to two-wheel drive, you're gonna have to change your oil pan. That being said, as deep as this is, the problem with these is, come over here, Stephen. So there's your front differential. Now I did not loosen this front differential. I did not pull the drive shaft out of the front differential. Some people loosen the front differential, remove the drive shaft, and tilt the differential forward. I did not do that. I'll show you what I did. But the problem is when you go to pull this out, especially a 5-speed, because you know you got that big long shaft in there that you got to come out of. Automatics are a lot easier because they don't have that shaft. You undo your torque converter bolts, they can almost come up straight. Quite a bit easier. This one was a little bit tight, and you have to clear this front differential. So here's what we did. As you can see, I still have it. We barely pulled this out, so I still have it jacked up. So what you do, you undo your two front radiator bolts. They're like a body bolt on the front radiator support. They're actually nuts on the radiator. Undo the nuts, pull them off, remove here you can see, remove the body mount from the front body mounts, which are right there, And there's another set right here on the back of the body, right by the door split. You don't need to remove those all the way. Loosen them though. Loosen them down, but leave them in there. And then you can jack this body up. You only need like 4 inches. So it's tight, and it's gonna be quite interesting putting this back in. We're gonna probably lift the body up even a little bit more to get that angle, to get it to go in on that shaft. It's a pain to remove these with the trans, so that's why we opted to do it this way. We'll get it in. They always seem to go in easier than they come out for some reason. So that's the second problem. Front differential on 4-wheel drive. 2-wheel drive, you don't have that concern. You still hit that oil pan, but it's a lot easier. So, where else are we? So that's my suggestion. Raise the body up, get you your 4 inches that you need, then you can pop it out. Right here, concern, these are your fuel lines. Now they come up and over the motor, so as you're lifting these up, you can see they're quite flexible, but I'm gonna spin around here real quick. You need to be aware of this. Here's an engineering marvel. So this right here is a clamp for these fuel lines. Make sure you remove that. It sits in the head right there. I think that was the one. Pretty sure that was it. Bolt goes through there. All it does is hold that clamp. If you remove this without removing that clamp, you're going to be buying new fuel lines, because you'll stretch them straight. And they're probably not that cheap. So don't mess up your fuel lines. And when you got movement here after you've removed it, make sure you pull them out of the way as you're pulling that engine out. What else do we got? You also have right here, you can see there, ground straps on each side of the head. So they're bolted right there and right here, I think. Make sure you remove those ground straps or you'll rip them out. These are all hidden by the firewall. They are right close to the firewall. Here's the other thing. Here's the ground strap bolts. But I don't see I think the actual engine bolt fell down. But so this bell housing bolt right there, it goes through this side. Now we've got the trans raised up to try to get us a better angle. You can see how tight it is on that firewall right there. It is tight. Now I got the trans up, but when you go to remove this bolt right here, a lot of dealer mechanics will say, once you get that bolt out, throw it down the driveway and forget about it. Do not put it back in. Most of them won't. When you're getting paid shop rate, speed is the name of the game, and the faster you change the motor or do something where you got to remove a motor, the faster you are, the more money you make. That's just the name of the game with shop rate, dealer mechanics, or most shops. They go off shop rate, a certain amount of hours for the job. The faster they can do it, the more they get paid. That's the way it is. That is a pain in the butt. This one, I knew the trick. My 2-wheel drive, the little gold S10 I had, I fought that one for a long time. Here's what I do. People go there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. This is what I do, and it worked like a charm on this one. I have not removed the rear drive shaft out of this. It's still on. I haven't removed any drive shafts. What I do is I remove the 2 nuts off the transmission mount while it's still connected to the engine. Pull those nuts off. Get your floor jack, put it right at the tail cone of that trans, and at that point you can jack that trans up. You can jack it all the way up to the body, and that there gives you leverage here. the motor will tilt this way, the firewall will stay. That gives you a chance to get in there. Now, I find that the easiest way. I'll tell you another way also, but I find that the easiest way. What I do is I'll break them loose with a wrench at that point, both of these, because these are both tight against that firewall. This one's easier. This one's not as easy. So jack it up. So at that point, your engine's gonna be tilted like that. Your firewall's gonna come away from it. So then I get a hand wrench from up here, right through here, and I'll start undoing it. Then I grab my gear wrench right there. 14mm gear wrench. Throw that dude on there. Now you gotta watch out because you're gonna go to a point. If you look at this gear wrench, it's just if you want to go the opposite direction, you flip it over. So I don't have the lever. Sometimes you can really hose yourself doing that. If you're pulling that bolt out and you get it up against that firewall, you are hosed if you can't get the bolt all the way out, because you cannot reverse it to move it back in. And if you go back in, it's not going to work. So be aware of that. But uses up these ones. This engine has never come out. This engine has 97,000 miles on it. I broke it loose, and I was able to just with my hands undo them. If you couldn't and you didn't want to use the gear wrench because you're so tight against the firewall, just get an open end wrench. A lot of people will, like I said, that bolt has fallen out and down. A lot of times it'll go back to the firewall, but as long as you can get that out and unthreaded from the engine, a lot of people will leave that bolt in the trans side there. So when they go to get it back in, they can go right in. I'll be flat honest with you. The bolt's not going to go back in on this one. It's not needed. Now, you guys there'll be people out there that'll argue with me, saying, "Oh, well, it's engineered to have that many bolts," but I guarantee you, there's a lot of S10s running without that bolt. So, do what you want. Don't sue me because you didn't put that bolt in and then you get a loose engine. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. You got your option, you choose for you. Second way people get that bolt out is, so there's 6 bolts total here. You got 2, and these 2. Now, the way to get these 2 are from underneath and these 2. You get a long extensions, and whether you gotta do 2 or 3, you get a wobbly, you can get in there with an impact, you can get on it, it's nice and quick. A lot of people want a wobbly for this. So, that being said, you gotta go the opposite direction of what I do. I tilt the motor this way, pull it out from top. If you wanna get it from the bottom, which a lot of people do, and that's fine, you have to remove the transmission cross member. 4 bolts, I think. It might be 6 bolts. I think it's only 4 bolts, 2 on each side. If you want to go that way, you can remove that whole cross member. They don't even remove the 2 nuts that I take off from the transmission mount. They just remove that cross member, and then they drop it. They end up jacking up the front of the motor so it runs it that way, and then they can get a big long extension with a wobbly up there. The reason I don't do that, I didn't do it on this one, was because I had fought that gold one, my gold S10 2-wheel drive. I fought that one. I'm pretty sure it was tighter than this one, or I just remembered the easy way around this time. My memory's good, but it's short, so I'm surprised I remembered it, but it came right out. But I fought that, and I tried to go up with the extension after I had that down and that, and I finally went the other way, and it came out. Third way to skin a cat, so we went through 2 of them. Some people actually go inside, and they'll cut the body, the firewall out to get to that particular bolt. They cut it out in their thing. That seems like a lot of work to me for the 1 bolt. They'll cut it out, they'll pull it out, put it in, and then they just put some sheet metal screws and a cover over it. If you're planning on changing your motor a lot, which I'm not, that might be a good way to go. I don't know. Seems like a lot of work. Okay, so we went over all of it. Ground straps, got to get them off. The fuel line clamp, that's the stupidest thing that GM did. I don't know why they couldn't implement that clamp with a body bolt, or at least raise it higher. I mean, if you look at this, how low that is, your firewall actually comes over. It's a pain, and you can't get a gear wrench on that clamp because it is so tight with, well, here, let me show you. So it is so tight there that this gear wrench will not go over it because of the line there, and it's just too tight. So you end up doing one flat at a time because the spring-loaded clamp, they don't come out by hand like the bell housing bolts or the ground strap bolts. And once you break them loose, they come out by hand. Those don't, and they're further down. So what else do we got? Four-wheel drives have oil filter. It's not on two-wheel drives. Come around here, Steven. Two-wheel drives have the oil filter right there. This one has an adapter that goes over to these cooling lines, which there your filter is here on the four-wheel drive. Two-wheel drive, it's there. Four-wheel drive, you got all this. You can see this is one thing that GM is known for and probably cussed about a lot. You look at these lines, you can see leaks at the swedges. These lines, there's people that replace these lines all the time, and they do this after so many miles, so much time, they'll leak. That's what Chevy oil lines are known to leak. That's what they're known for. Anyway, so I'm gonna replace these. This thing spun a bearing. There's a bunch of oil, metal in the oil. It's not worth my time to even clean them, especially when they look like that. I'll just replace them. They're actually, luckily, they're cheap. They're not that much money. But here you can see they go into here. My oil adapter is there. You look at these lines here. Now these go into the radiator and act as an oil cooler also. So they have an oil cooler. I'll be honest, I don't know if that's on all S10s or if you just have a tow package. I don't think this has a tow package because it doesn't have a tow hit, a receiver. It's got a ball in the bumper, but I would think if you had a tow package, I would hope you would have a receiver and wiring and stuff. This doesn't, so I bet these oil lines and oil coolers are in all of them. I'm going to replace the radiator because it was pretty ugly. I mean, I've got oil in my coolant, I've got coolant in my oil. But if you look at these, the guy that owned this before me had replaced these lines. These are new lines. Still not going to use them. I don't trust it. It's full of oil. Full of metal in the oil. I don't want to have any problems with the new motor. So, let's see, what else? Oh, this is a quick one. This is all the things that you're going to fight if you're going to pull this engine. There's a wire harness that goes right here. Don't forget to undo that wire harness. And be careful with this. You're so tight to that firewall that you could easily break this off. So you could remove it before. I mean, it just unscrews. I didn't worry about it, but so you could remove that. What else do we got? One of these equalizers here really help out. I've used that. I actually bought this. So if you get a Harbor Freight, so this is a Harbor Freight load leveler. Read the reviews on the load leveler of a Harbor Freight. they're bad. These things explode. Bolts break, they'll explode. I've heavily modified this one. I just got the initial setup. I have redone all the chains. The chains are my own. If you look at the Harbor Freight ones, they're usually not welded here. Kind of scary. But I've replaced all the chains. I've replaced all the hardware. I actually welded on a deal for the ratchet here, so you can move that pretty easily on any which way you want. I actually went one step further. Usually they have a bushing here. If you look in here, I put 2 bearings in there, so this thing rolls sweet. I was actually a little bit worried that when I was going to be at a heavy incline, that the thing would actually run away and roll. I haven't had that problem, luckily. So it works really good. I powder coated it myself, and then I polished the runner on here. Side note, you guys probably don't care, but if you get a Harbor Freight one, be careful. Don't stand under it if you're not going to modify it. Fix the chains, fix the they didn't have a problem with this, but the bolts on a lot of them exploded. I think it was this bolt. I put all new good heavy duty bolts in all these. So anyway, what are we missing, Steven, as far as problems getting this out? Of course, you got your exhaust. You can see we broke more exhaust studs. Every time you go to pull a motor out, whether you add Croil to them, penetrating oil, PB blaster, you're gonna break them a lot of times. It is what it is, and we'll fix that. So anyway, so that's where we're at. It's gonna take a little bit to get that engine there ready to go back in. I like to keep the same intakes on, so this one will come off. I'll check the flatness of the intake itself. This is actually an aluminum one. Newer S10s, they went with plastic, but that's an actual aluminum one. But I'll check, make sure that it's nice and flat, make sure that we don't have a intake gasket issue that's causing the oil and antifreeze to combine, or if it's a head gasket, and I'll let you guys know what it is and show you. But anyway, we're gonna swap a lot of stuff over to that engine. Like I said, reseal that, new gaskets. We'll put a new clutch on it. There's no, I don't know, I'm weird, but there's no reason to go this far. This truck has 97,000 miles on it. I would never run that clutch if I pulled out the motor and put a new one in. But we'll get this on the engine stand, put them side by side, swap around. It's going to be a couple weeks before we get back to this. Steven actually has his S10 booked to come into the shop on Friday. And lo and behold, we're pulling that transmission out of that. Now his is a 2.2 liter 4-cylinder, but it's 5-speed trans. We put a brand new clutch in that one, and a good brand clutch, and it bit us in the butt. It's got a bad throwout bearing on it. Once again, it's been in 2 years, probably 10,000 miles. I don't know if Steven even drives at 5,000 miles a year, but 10,000 miles, you should not have a throwout bearing go out. Disappointed in that particular brand. I'm not going to mention them, but I guess we'll not buy that brand anymore. Steven's going to replace that clutch while it's out, even though it's probably good. I don't know. We'll pull it out and evaluate it, but I just can't see going that far and not just throwing a clutch in. I mean, for S10s, clutches are cheap. Even the supposedly good ones are cheap, so they're not bad priced. If you didn't have the money, you were down on your luck, I'd reuse a clutch. I can afford it, I'll run a new one. Same with water pumps. I would never put a used motor in with a used water pump. That's just me. Do what you guys want. But so that's where we're at. Hopefully we'll do more videos. We'll do a video of Steven's truck. His is a cool little truck. His is a 2002 S10, two-wheel drive, lowered, and it's a good-looking truck. So that's due into the shop on Friday, and so we'll be ripping and tearing on that one. Probably could get done in a week, or a weekend, I should say, a Friday and a Saturday. We don't work Sundays. But we want to see if it's a pilot bearing, see if it's a throwout bearing, see if it's the input shaft of the trans. It's got a lot of miles on the transmission. We'll do a video on it. We'll let Steven talk at that one. Anyway, I know this video's going long, but that's all the trouble spots on a 4.3 pulling it out. And that's the way we do it. There's, like I said, there's a lot of different things out there on the internet and YouTube of how people do it, but we've had good luck with this. When you raise the body, you do not have to remove the whole front clip. As you can see here, we didn't remove the fenders, we didn't remove the bumper, the grill's still in, the radiator support. All you got to do is undo those, put a board along your body so you can distribute the weight, and just, I mean, it lifts up. Make sure you don't, I mean, my steering shaft's still installed, so I mean, you can see how much that's raised up there, but just be careful on your brake lines. You can see my brake line's a little stretched there, but it's not bad enough. The coils are in it. I'm not worried about it at all. And so there you have it. I think we covered all the hard areas on a 4.3, and they're really not that hard. It's more difficult than some other engines I've pulled just because of the stuff you have to go through to do it, but it's definitely not the worst engine I've pulled. When you go to do it, you need to, this video's going long, the power steering pump needs to come off, and the only way you can get the power steering pump off is to remove the power steering pulley, which is pressed on. So go to AutoZone, O'Reilly's, whoever your local parts house is. Rent a tool. You probably only use it once or twice. I still don't own that tool. I probably should, because we end up using it quite often. But it's an remove and install tool. Rent it for free. Pop off, pop on. Anyway, so thanks for tuning in. Hopefully we'll do another video quicker than we have on some of the others. But that's where we're at in the 94 S10 shop truck. So now we'll get it on the engine stand and start pulling it apart. Find out what's wrong with it. Well, we know what's wrong with it, but find out what caused the spun bearing. Okay, thanks. See ya.